Emma Johnson thought her life was over when she spent her last $40 on a dying stranger in a hospital parking garage. The single mother and struggling nurse had just worked a brutal 16-hour shift, and her diabetic son desperately needed insulin she could not afford. But when she found an elderly man freezing to death in the cold, something deep inside her refused to walk away. That decision would cost Emma everything: her job, her career, her home, her reputation. The hospital administrator who fired her made sure Emma would never work as a nurse again, destroying her life with ruthless efficiency while getting promoted for her cruelty. For 6 months, Emma lived in her car with her son, rationing his life-saving medication while working minimum wage at a grocery store. She had lost everything for showing compassion to someone the world had forgotten. But Emma had no idea who that homeless man really was. She had no idea that her act of kindness had been witnessed by people she never knew were watching. And she had no idea that the woman who destroyed her life had just made the biggest mistake of her career. Because sometimes, when you sacrifice everything to do what is right, the universe has a way of keeping score. And when the reckoning comes, it comes with interest. This is the story of how one nurse's compassion triggered a chain of events that would expose corruption at the highest levels, destroy a criminal empire built on stolen money meant for veterans, and prove that sometimes the people who appear to have the least power are actually the most dangerous enemies you could ever make. At 2 in the morning, Emma Johnson's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip her car keys. Not from the cold, though the December wind cut through her scrubs like razors. Not from exhaustion, though she had just finished her 3rd consecutive 16-hour shift at City General Hospital. Her hands shook because she had exactly $47 in her wallet, and her 8-year-old son Michael needed insulin refills that cost $230. Emma stumbled across the hospital parking garage, her sneakers squeaking against the wet concrete. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows between the concrete pillars. She was so focused on calculating how many meals she could skip to afford Michael's medication that she almost missed him entirely. A low groan echoed from behind a massive concrete column. Emma froze. Her first instinct was to keep walking. She had learned that lesson working night shifts in the city. Mind your own business. Get to your car. Lock the doors. Drive home. But something about that sound made her stop. It was not the groan of someone dangerous. It was the sound of someone dying. Emma pulled out her phone's flashlight and crept toward the noise. What she found made her stomach drop. An elderly man sat slumped against the concrete wall, his back pressed against the cold stone. His clothes were soaked through from the storm that had been raging for hours. His lips were blue. His skin had the waxy, pale appearance that Emma recognized immediately from her years in the emergency room. Hypothermia. Advanced stages. The man's eyes fluttered open as Emma approached. They were crystal blue, sharp and intelligent despite his condition. He looked up at her with a mixture of confusion and recognition, as if he had been expecting her. "Ma'am," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind howling through the garage. "I think I might be in trouble here." Emma knelt beside him, her nursing instincts taking over. She pressed her fingers to his wrist. His pulse was weak and irregular. His breathing was shallow. His core temperature had dropped dangerously low. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" Emma asked, already pulling off her jacket to wrap around his shoulders. "William," he said, struggling to focus on her face. "William Thompson. I served my country. 32 years. But I cannot remember how I got here." Emma's heart clenched. She had seen this before. Veterans with PTSD, lost and confused, ending up in places they did not recognize. But this man was different. Even in his confused state, there was something about his posture, the way he held his shoulders, that spoke of military training that ran bone deep. "William, I'm Emma. I'm a nurse here at the hospital. You're safe now, but we need to get you warm." William's eyes suddenly became alert, focused. He grabbed Emma's wrist with surprising strength. "The mission," he said urgently. "I cannot abandon the mission. Never leave a man behind. That is the code." "What mission, William?" Emma asked gently, trying to keep him talking while she assessed his condition. "I was supposed to find them. The forgotten ones. The ones who fell through the cracks." His voice trailed off, and his grip on her wrist loosened. "But I think I became one of them instead." Emma looked around the parking garage. It was nearly 3 in the morning. The hospital was in lockdown mode for the night shift. Security rarely patrolled this level. William could die here, and no one would find him until morning. She made a decision that would change both their lives forever. William, I need you to listen to me carefully. Can you walk if I help you? He nodded weakly. Emma helped him to his feet, surprised by how tall he was. Even hunched over from the cold, he stood nearly 6 feet. She could feel the solid muscle beneath his wet clothes. This was not someone who had been homeless for years. This was recent. I am going to take you somewhere warm and safe, Emma said, guiding him toward the hospital's service entrance. But I need you to stay quiet and follow my lead. Emma knew she was breaking protocol. Hospital policy strictly forbade bringing unauthorized individuals into the building. She could lose her job. She could lose her nursing license. But looking at William's blue lips and seeing the way his whole body shook uncontrollably, she knew she could not leave him to die in a parking garage. She used her badge to access the service elevator, praying they would not encounter any staff members. The elevator climbed to the 3rd floor, where Emma knew there was a small storage room that had been unused since the hospital's recent renovation. Where are we going? William asked, his voice stronger now that he was out of the wind. Somewhere you can get warm and dry, Emma replied. William, can you tell me what happened to you? How did you end up in the parking garage? William was quiet for a long moment as Emma led him down the dimly lit hallway. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with shame. I was Special Forces. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. When I came home, I thought the hard part was over. He paused as Emma unlocked the storage room door. I was wrong. The storage room was small but clean, with a few chairs and a sink. Emma helped William sit down and began gathering supplies from nearby supply closets. Clean scrubs, blankets, towels, anything that could help warm him up. The nightmares started first. William continued as Emma helped him out of his wet clothes and into dry scrubs. Then the flashbacks. I could not hold down a job, could not maintain relationships. The VA tried to help, but the waiting lists were so long, and the bureaucracy. Emma wrapped him in warm blankets, her heart breaking as she listened to his story. She had heard variations of this same tale too many times from patients who came through the emergency room. I lost my house 6 months ago, lost my car 2 months after that. I have been sleeping in shelters when I can get a bed, but most nights. He gestured helplessly. Most nights I just walk. I walk all night because the memories are quieter when I am moving. Emma sat down across from him, studying his face in the fluorescent light. Despite his circumstances, she could see the man he had been. The discipline in the way he sat, the respect in the way he spoke to her, the intelligence in his eyes that suggested a sharp mind trapped in an impossible situation. William, have you eaten today? He shook his head. Yesterday, maybe. The shelter served breakfast, but I had to leave early to avoid the crowds. Emma checked her watch. 3:30 in the morning. She thought about the $47 in her wallet, the money she needed for groceries, the insulin she could not afford for Michael. She made another decision that surprised even her. Stay here. Do not leave this room. I will be back in 20 minutes. Emma left William in the storage room and took the elevator down to the hospital cafeteria. She knew the night kitchen staff, knew they often had leftover soup and sandwiches that would otherwise be thrown away. But tonight, the cafeteria was closed and locked. Emma stood outside the cafeteria doors, thinking about William upstairs, probably wondering if she had abandoned him like everyone else in his life had. She thought about his words, never leave a man behind. She walked to the hospital's main entrance, where she knew there was a 24-hour diner across the street. The wind nearly knocked her over as she crossed the parking lot, but she pressed on. The diner was nearly empty except for a tired-looking waitress and a cook who was cleaning the grill. Emma ordered soup, sandwiches, coffee, and pie, food that would stick to William's ribs and help his body generate heat. That is a lot of food for one person, the waitress commented as she rang up the order. It is for a friend who really needs it, Emma replied, handing over 38 of her last $47. When Emma returned to the storage room, she found William exactly where she had left him. He had not moved from the chair, as if he was afraid that leaving might make this kindness disappear. I brought you dinner, Emma said, setting the bags of food on the small table. William stared at the food as if he could not believe it was real. Ma'am, I cannot. I do not have money to pay you back. Did I ask you for money? Emma replied, unpacking the containers. You served our country for 32 years. The way I see it, our country owes you a lot more than soup and sandwiches." As William ate, Emma learned more about his story. He had been a colonel in the Special Forces. He had led men through impossible situations, saved lives, completed missions that would never be declassified. But when he came home, when the uniforms came off and the medals were put away, he found himself in a battle he did not know how to fight. "The thing about combat," William said, between bites of soup, "is that you always know who the enemy is. You know what victory looks like. But this—" He gestured around the storage room, at his borrowed scrubs, at the situation that had brought them together. "There is no clear enemy here. No mission parameters. No extraction plan." Emma understood. She had been fighting her own invisible war for years. The battle to provide for her son while working impossible hours. The fight against a healthcare system that seemed designed to crush both the patients and the people trying to help them. "William, can I ask you something?" Emma said. "You mentioned a mission earlier. What did you mean?" William's expression grew serious. "Before all this happened, before I lost everything, I was working on something important. Trying to understand why so many veterans end up on the streets. Trying to figure out where the system was failing." He paused, looking directly into Emma's eyes. "I never imagined I would become part of the problem I was trying to solve." Emma spent the next hour listening to William's stories. Not just about his homelessness, but about his military service. The men he had served with. The missions they had completed. The friends he had lost. As he talked, she began to understand that this was not just any homeless veteran. This was someone who had dedicated his entire life to serving others, only to find himself abandoned when he needed help most. By 5 in the morning, William looked like a different person. The color had returned to his face. His hands had stopped shaking. The sharp intelligence in his eyes was fully present. "Emma," he said as she prepared to leave for the day, "I cannot thank you enough for what you have done tonight. You saved my life." "You do not need to thank me," Emma replied. "Just promise me you will stay safe." William nodded. "I promise." "And Emma?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn military dog tag. "If something happens to me, if I do not make it through this, I want you to have this. It belonged to my best friend who did not make it home. I have carried it for 15 years. Emma stared at the dog tag, overwhelmed by the trust William was placing in her. "William, nothing is going to happen to you. You are going to get through this." "Maybe," he said. "But if I do, it will be because tonight I remembered that there are still people in this world who care about doing the right thing, even when it costs them something." As Emma finally headed home, she thought about William's words. She had spent 38 of her last $47 on food for a stranger. She had risked her job to help someone she barely knew. By any practical measure, what she had done was foolish. But as she drove through the empty streets toward her small apartment, where her son Michael was sleeping peacefully, Emma realized that for the first time in months, she felt proud of the choices she had made. She had no idea that those choices were about to set in motion a series of events that would change both her life and William's forever. The storm was passing, but the real test was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Emma's life had become a carefully orchestrated lie. Every night after her shift, she would smuggle food from the hospital cafeteria to William, who had been living in the abandoned storage room. Every morning, she would check his vital signs, bring him clean clothes, and listen to more stories about his military service and the mission he kept mentioning. But Emma was drowning. The insulin for her son Michael had cost her the rent money. The electricity bill remained unpaid on her kitchen counter, printed in angry red letters threatening disconnection. Emma had started rationing her own meals, eating only crackers and peanut butter so that Michael could have proper dinners and William could have the nutrition he needed to recover his strength. She told herself it was temporary. William was getting stronger every day. Soon he would be well enough to navigate the shelter system again, maybe even find some kind of work. She just needed to hold on a little longer. Emma had no idea that Patricia Brooks, the hospital administrator, was already watching her. Patricia had built her career on what she called operational efficiency. To her, efficiency meant cutting costs, reducing liability, and eliminating any activity that did not directly generate revenue. She had been tracking unusual supply usage, irregular access card swipes, and unexplained food inventory discrepancies. All signs pointed to Emma Johnson. On a cold Tuesday morning in January, Emma was helping William with physical therapy exercises in the storage room when she heard the distinctive click of high heels in the hallway. Her blood turned to ice. "Stay completely quiet," she whispered to William, who immediately understood the gravity of the situation. But it was too late. The storage room door flew open, and Patricia Brooks stepped inside, flanked by 2 security guards. Patricia was a sharp-faced woman in her early 50s, wearing an expensive navy suit and an expression of cold fury. Well, Patricia said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Emma Johnson. I should have known." Emma stood slowly, positioning herself between Patricia and William. "Ms. Brooks, I can explain." "Explain?" Patricia laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "You want to explain how you have been stealing hospital supplies, using our facilities as a homeless shelter, and creating a massive liability nightmare." William started to rise from his chair, but Emma put a hand on his shoulder, silently telling him to stay seated. "This man was dying in our parking garage," Emma said, her voice steady despite the terror racing through her chest. "I could not just leave him there." "You absolutely could have and should have left him there," Patricia snapped. "You should have called security. You should have called the police. Instead, you decided to play hero and turn our hospital into your personal charity project." Patricia walked closer to William, studying him with disgust. "Look at him. Look at this mess you have brought into our sterile environment. Do you have any idea what kind of diseases homeless people carry? What kind of legal exposure you have created for this hospital?" "His name is William Thompson," Emma said firmly. "He is a veteran who served our country for 32 years. He deserves basic human dignity." "I do not care if he is George Washington himself," Patricia replied coldly. "He is trespassing on hospital property, and you are fired." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. "Ms. Brooks, please. I need this job. My son depends on." "Your son should have been your first priority," Patricia interrupted. "Instead of taking care of your own family, you decided to waste time and resources on this vagrant." Patricia turned to the security guards. "Escort Mr. Johnson out of the building immediately. Call the police and have this man arrested for trespassing. I want him banned from hospital property permanently." "Wait," William said, speaking for the first time. His voice was strong, commanding. "This woman saved my life. If you want to arrest someone, arrest me. But do not punish her for showing compassion." Patricia laughed again. "Compassion? Is that what we are calling theft and policy violations now?" She looked directly at Emma. "You stole food. You stole supplies. You used hospital resources for unauthorized purposes. You put this entire institution at risk." "I used leftover food that was going to be thrown away," Emma protested. "I used basic supplies to help a human being who was dying." "You stole," Patricia repeated firmly. "And theft is a fireable offense. Security, please escort Ms. Johnson to her locker so she can collect her personal items, then escort her off the property." As the security guards moved toward Emma, Patricia was not finished. She pulled out her phone and began dialing. "Ms. Brooks, who are you calling?" Emma asked, dreading the answer. "The State Nursing Board," Patricia replied with a cruel smile. "I am reporting you for unprofessional conduct, misuse of medical resources, and creating unsafe conditions for patients. By the time I am finished, you will never work as a nurse again in this state." Emma felt the world tilting around her. Losing her job was devastating enough, but losing her nursing license would destroy any chance she had of supporting Michael. Nursing was all she knew. It was her entire identity, her only marketable skill. "Please," Emma whispered. "Do not do this. I will leave quietly. I will never bother you again. Just please do not report me to the nursing board." Patricia paused, her finger hovering over her phone screen. For a moment, Emma thought she might show mercy. "No," Patricia said finally. "You made your choice when you decided to turn our hospital into a homeless shelter. Actions have consequences, Ms. Johnson. Maybe this will teach you to think about your own family before you start trying to save every stray you find on the street." Patricia finished dialing and walked out of the storage room, speaking loudly enough for Emma and William to hear. "Yes, this is Patricia Brooks, Chief Administrator at City General Hospital. I need to file a formal complaint against one of our former nurses." Emma sank into the chair next to William, her whole body shaking. In the span of 5 minutes, she had lost her job, her career, and any realistic hope of supporting her son. "Emma," William said softly, "I am so sorry. This is all my fault. "No," Emma replied, though tears were streaming down her face. "I made the choice. I knew the risks." But as the security guards returned to escort them both out of the hospital, Emma wondered if she had made the right choice after all. How could helping someone be the wrong thing to do? How could showing compassion result in such devastating consequences? The next few weeks became a nightmare that seemed to have no bottom. Emma was arrested along with William in the hospital parking lot. Though the charges against her were dropped, the arrest went on her record. The nursing board investigation proceeded exactly as Patricia had promised, and Emma's license was suspended pending a full review. Without her nursing income, Emma could not afford rent on her apartment. She and Michael moved into her car, a 15-year-old Honda with a broken heater and windows that did not seal properly. Emma told Michael they were camping while they looked for a new place to live, but Michael was 8 years old, not stupid. He knew they were homeless. The insulin situation became critical. Emma's health insurance was tied to her employment, so Michael's prescription coverage ended immediately. Emma tried to buy insulin out of pocket, but the price was astronomical. She began rationing Michael's doses, checking his blood sugar obsessively, living in constant fear that she was slowly killing her son. Meanwhile, William had been sentenced to 30 days in county jail for trespassing. Before he was taken away, he pressed a folded piece of paper into Emma's hand. "I wrote this for you," he said as the police officers led him toward their car. "Emma, what you did for me. No one has shown me that kind of kindness in years. I will never forget it, and I promise you, somehow I will find a way to make this right." Emma unfolded the paper later that night as she sat in her car with Michael sleeping in the back seat. It was a letter written in William's precise handwriting. "Emma, you saved my life, and in doing so, you reminded me why I spent 32 years fighting for this country. You are what America is supposed to be about. You are the reason people like me put on the uniform and go to war. Do not let them break your spirit. Do not let them convince you that compassion is weakness. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and I am honored to have known you. Your friend always, William Thompson." At the bottom of the letter was his military dog tag, the one that had belonged to his friend who did not make it home. Emma held the dog tag and cried until she had no tears left. But Patricia Brooks was not finished destroying Emma's life. 2 weeks after the incident, Patricia was promoted to chief administrator of the entire hospital system. Her first official act was to call a staff meeting where she used Emma's case as an example of what she called bleeding heart mentality that threatened the hospital's mission. Emma Johnson thought she was being compassionate. Patricia told the assembled doctors, nurses, and staff members. Instead, she was being selfish. She put her own emotional needs above the safety and security of our patients, our staff, and our institution. Patricia went on to implement new policies specifically designed to prevent any similar incidents. Staff members were forbidden from bringing unauthorized individuals onto hospital property for any reason. Anyone caught providing assistance to homeless individuals on or near hospital grounds would be terminated immediately. "We are not a homeless shelter," Patricia declared. "We are a medical facility, and our resources must be dedicated exclusively to paying patients who generate revenue for this institution." The cruel irony was not lost on the nursing staff. Many of them had been friends with Emma, had respected her work ethic and her dedication to patient care. They watched Patricia receive accolades from the hospital board for decisive leadership and fiscal responsibility. Patricia bought a new Mercedes with her promotion bonus. She joined an exclusive country club. She gave interviews to healthcare management magazines about her innovative approaches to reducing operational costs. Meanwhile, Emma was sleeping in her car and rationing her son's life-saving medication. The nursing board investigation dragged on for months, during which time Emma could not work in her profession. She took a job bagging groceries at a discount supermarket for minimum wage. The work was physically demanding and paid a fraction of what she had earned as a nurse, but it was the only job she could find that would hire someone with a pending professional misconduct investigation. Every day, Emma stood behind that checkout counter, scanning items and bagging groceries, watching her life savings dwindle to nothing. She had gone from being a skilled medical professional earning a decent salary to being another invisible member of the working poor. Her co-workers at the grocery store were kind, but had no idea about her background. They saw her as just another single mother struggling to get by. They could not know that 6 months earlier, She had been saving lives in the emergency room, that she had years of medical training, that she had once been respected and valued for her skills and expertise. Michael's health began to deteriorate as Emma continued to ration his insulin. She told herself she was being careful, that she was monitoring his blood sugar levels closely enough to keep him safe. But she could see the signs. He was losing weight. He was tired all the time. His mood swings were becoming more frequent and more severe. Emma lay awake at night in the back seat of her car, listening to Michael's breathing, terrified that she would wake up one morning to find that her attempts to make his medication last longer had killed him. She thought about William's letter, about his promise to somehow make things right. But William was in jail, and even when he got out, what could a homeless veteran do to help her situation? Emma had no idea that William Thompson was not who he appeared to be. She had no idea that her act of compassion had set in motion a series of events that would ultimately expose the corruption that had destroyed her life. She had no idea that Patricia Brooks had made the biggest mistake of her career when she decided to destroy the woman who had saved William Thompson's life. The reckoning was coming, but first, Emma would have to endure the darkest period of her life. She would have to learn what it meant to lose everything while still clinging to the belief that doing the right thing mattered. She would have to discover just how much strength she possessed when everything else was stripped away. 6 months after her termination, Emma Johnson was scanning groceries at Metro Discount Foods when her life changed forever. She had just finished ringing up diapers and formula for another struggling single mother when she noticed the 2 men in dark suits standing at the customer service counter. They were not shopping. They were watching her. Emma's hands trembled as she continued working, memories of that terrible night at the hospital flooding back. The men approached her checkout lane, their expressions serious but not threatening. "Emma Johnson?" the taller man asked, showing her a badge. "I am Agent Robert Davis, Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is Agent James Martinez. We need to speak with you immediately." Emma's knees nearly buckled. "Am I in trouble? Is this about the hospital incident?" "Ma'am, you are not in any trouble," Agent Davis said gently. "But we do need to discuss William Thompson. Is there somewhere private we can talk?" Emma's manager, a kind woman named Helen who had become protective of her hard-working employee, immediately offered her office. Emma followed the agents, her mind racing with possibilities. Had something happened to William? Was he dead? Agent Davis closed the office door and turned to face Emma. "Ms. Johnson, what I am about to tell you is classified information that has recently been declassified due to the conclusion of a federal investigation." Emma sank into a chair, bracing herself for whatever was coming. "William Thompson is not just any homeless veteran," Agent Martinez continued. "He is Colonel William Thompson, one of the Pentagon's most decorated intelligence officers and the head of a classified investigation into systemic failures in veteran care services." Emma stared at them in disbelief. "That is impossible. William was homeless. He was dying in a parking garage. That was part of his cover," Agent Davis explained. "Colonel Thompson volunteered for an extremely dangerous undercover assignment. He spent 6 months living on the streets, documenting the failures of the system from the inside. The mission was so classified that even we did not know his exact location." Agent Martinez opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick file. "When Colonel Thompson disappeared from our surveillance for 3 weeks, we assumed the worst. We launched a massive search operation. We feared he had been killed or that his cover had been blown. The 3 weeks he was with me," Emma whispered, the pieces beginning to fall into place. "Exactly," Agent Davis confirmed. "During those 3 weeks, Colonel Thompson was supposed to check in with his handlers every 48 hours. He missed every single check-in. We had teams searching the entire city." Agent Martinez handed Emma a letter with official Pentagon letterhead. "Colonel Thompson's final report credited you with saving not only his life, but the entire mission. According to his documentation, your compassion gave him the strength to continue the investigation and gather the evidence we needed." Emma opened the letter with shaking hands. It was addressed to her personally, signed by the Secretary of Defense himself. "Ms. Emma Johnson," the letter began, "your extraordinary act of courage and compassion in aiding Colonel William Thompson during his classified mission has contributed directly to one of the most important veteran affairs investigations in recent history." But Agent Davis was not finished. "Ms. Johnson," Colonel Thompson's investigation uncovered massive systemic corruption in veteran services. But more specifically, it uncovered corruption at your former workplace. Emma looked up from the letter. City General Hospital? Patricia Brooks has been under federal investigation for 8 months, Agent Martinez explained. Colonel Thompson's report provided the final evidence we needed to proceed with prosecution. Agent Davis opened another file, this one filled with photographs and financial documents. Ms. Brooks has been embezzling funds from federal programs designed to assist homeless veterans and indigent patients. Over the past 4 years, she has stolen over $2.3 million. Emma felt the room spinning around her. $2.3 million? The money was supposed to fund exactly the kind of programs that could have helped veterans like Colonel Thompson, Agent Martinez continued. Transitional housing, mental health services, job training programs. Instead, Patricia Brooks funneled the money into personal accounts. Agent Davis showed Emma photographs of Patricia's new Mercedes, her country club membership, her expensive jewelry and clothing. She used stolen federal funds to finance a lifestyle that her salary could never support. But that is not all, Agent Martinez said grimly. The investigation revealed that Patricia Brooks specifically targeted the hospital's charity care programs. She eliminated services for homeless patients, reduced mental health support, and cut funding for indigent care, all while pocketing the money that was supposed to fund those services. Emma thought about all the homeless patients she had treated over the years, the ones who had been turned away or given minimal care. She thought about the mental health programs that had been mysteriously cut just before she was fired. The cruelest irony, Agent Davis continued, is that Patricia Brooks destroyed your career to cover up her own crimes. She knew that compassionate nurses like you were a threat to her embezzlement scheme. The more attention drawn to homeless patients and indigent care, the more likely someone would notice that the money was missing. Agent Martinez leaned forward. Ms. Johnson, Colonel Thompson's report specifically noted that your firing was not just cruel, it was criminal. Patricia Brooks used her position to retaliate against you for doing exactly what the federal programs were designed to support. Emma was struggling to process the magnitude of what she was hearing. Where is William now? Is he safe? Colonel Thompson completed his mission and returned to active duty 3 months ago, Agent Davis replied. He specifically requested permission to personally deliver this information to you. As if on cue, there was a knock on the office door. Agent Martinez opened it, and William Thompson walked in. But this was not the broken, confused homeless man Emma had known. This William Thompson wore a crisp military dress uniform covered with ribbons and medals. His bearing was confident and commanding. His eyes were sharp and focused. Emma, William said, his voice filled with emotion. I owe you an apology and an explanation. Emma stood up slowly, still trying to reconcile this distinguished military officer with the man she had found dying in a parking garage. You do not owe me anything, Emma said softly. You were doing your job. No, William replied firmly. What you did for me went far beyond what anyone could have expected. You risked your career, your livelihood, your family's security to save the life of someone you believed was just a homeless stranger. William handed Emma an official document. This is a Presidential Citizen Medal citation. You are being awarded the highest civilian honor this country can bestow for your extraordinary service to a fellow American. Emma stared at the document, unable to speak. But that is just the beginning, William continued. Patricia Brooks was arrested this morning at her office. Federal agents executed search warrants simultaneously at her home, her office, and her bank accounts. Agent Davis smiled grimly. Ms. Brooks was in the middle of a board meeting when the arrests happened. She was presenting her quarterly report on cost savings when federal agents walked into the conference room and placed her in handcuffs. The look on her face, Agent Martinez added, was captured by local news cameras. The story is already going viral on social media. William pulled out his phone and showed Emma the news footage. There was Patricia Brooks, in her expensive suit, being led away in handcuffs while reporters shouted questions about embezzlement and fraud. She is facing federal charges that carry a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison, William explained. With the amount of money involved and the federal nature of the crimes, she will likely serve 20 years or more. Agent Davis opened another file. The hospital board fired Patricia immediately and launched their own investigation. They discovered that she had created false documentation to justify your termination and the complaint to the nursing board. Which brings us to more good news, Agent Martinez said. The nursing board has not only dropped all charges against you, they have issued a formal apology and a commendation for your dedication to patient care. Emma sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the rapid reversal of her fortunes. There is more, Williams said gently. The federal government is required to provide restitution to victims of Patricia Brooks' crimes. Since you were directly harmed by her criminal actions, you are entitled to compensation. Agent Davis handed Emma another document. The restitution payment is $2.8 million. The exact amount Patricia Brooks stole, plus interest and penalties. Emma stared at the number on the document, certain she was misreading it. $2.8 million? Patricia Brooks' conviction also triggers a civil lawsuit against the hospital, Agent Martinez explained. They are liable for additional damages for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. Based on similar cases, you can expect another settlement in the range of $5 to $7 million. William knelt down beside Emma's chair. Emma, I need you to understand something. What you did that night was not just an act of kindness to a stranger. You helped expose one of the largest cases of veteran services fraud in recent history. Because of your compassion, hundreds of homeless veterans will get the services they were promised. Emma looked up at William, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to help. I could not leave you there to die. And that, William replied, is exactly why you deserve every bit of recognition and compensation you are receiving. Agent Davis closed his briefcase. Ms. Johnson, there is one more thing. The hospital board has requested a meeting with you. They want to offer you a position. Emma looked confused. What kind of position? Chief Administrator, Agent Martinez said with a smile. Patricia Brooks' former job, with a salary of $400,000 per year plus benefits. Emma's grocery store manager, Helen, who had been quietly listening from the corner of the office, let out a gasp of amazement. They want me to run the hospital? Emma asked in disbelief. They want someone with integrity, William explained. Someone who puts patient care above profit margins. Someone who has proven that they will do the right thing even when it costs them everything. Over the next hour, William and the federal agents explained the full scope of Patricia Brooks' downfall. Her husband had filed for divorce, citing embarrassment and financial ruin. Her children had cut off contact with her, ashamed of her crimes. Her Mercedes had been seized by the government. Her country club membership had been revoked. Patricia Brooks was sitting in a federal holding cell, awaiting trial on charges that would likely result in decades in prison. All of her assets had been frozen. Her reputation in the healthcare industry was permanently destroyed. Meanwhile, the homeless veteran she had treated with such cruelty was being honored at the Pentagon for his service. The single mother she had destroyed out of spite was about to become one of the most powerful healthcare administrators in the state. There is something poetic about all of this, William observed. Patricia Brooks thought that showing compassion was a weakness. She believed that caring about other people made you vulnerable. William looked directly at Emma. She was wrong. Your compassion was not weakness, it was strength. It was the strength to do what was right when everyone else would have walked away. It was the strength that ultimately brought down her entire criminal enterprise. As Emma left the grocery store that day, still wearing her checkout uniform, she thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been sleeping in her car, rationing her son's insulin, convinced that her life was over. Now she was holding a Presidential Citizen Medal citation and a check for nearly $3 million. But more than that, she had learned something profound about the nature of justice. Sometimes doing the right thing led to immediate rewards, but sometimes doing the right thing required faith that eventually, somehow, justice would prevail. Patricia Brooks had believed that cruelty and selfishness would make her powerful and wealthy. Instead, they had made her a federal criminal facing decades in prison. Emma had chosen compassion and sacrifice, even when it seemed to cost her everything. In the end, that choice had not only saved her life, but had helped expose corruption that had harmed thousands of vulnerable people. That evening, Emma picked up Michael from school and told him they would never have to worry about money again. They would never have to sleep in the car. He would never have to worry about rationing his insulin. But most importantly, Emma realized she had never lost the thing that mattered most. She had never lost her ability to care about other people, even when caring had seemed to destroy her life. In the end, that was the difference between her and Patricia Brooks. Patricia had chosen to protect herself at the expense of others. Emma had chosen to protect others at the expense of herself. And in the end, justice had recognized the difference.